Good evening, this is STV News. It was revealed on the 24th that the Japanese government is considering establishing a diplomatic mission abroad in Wuhan City, Hubei Province, China. According to the government officials, it is coordinating with the Chinese side and is aiming for an early opening in China. There are consulates in Shanghai and Chongqing, but all of them are far from the Hubei province, and there have been calls for the establishment of diplomatic missions abroad in Wuhan. Wuhan City is an industrial base for automobiles and other industries, and Japanese companies are also expanding into it. After the outbreak of the new coronavirus spread for the first time in the world, an embassy staff was dispatched from Beijing, which is more than 1,000 kilometers away, to evacuate the local Japanese. On the 23rd, the Ottawa Group, which consists of volunteer countries from the European Union and the World Trade Organization, has a pandemic of infectious diseases, including refraining from exporting medical supplies, agreed on measures to deal with the outbreak. They would like to submit it to WTO in mid-December and obtain the agreement of 164 member countries in early next year. In addition to Canada, Japan, Australia, Brazil, Chile, Kenya, South Korea, Mexico, New Zealand, Norway, Singapore, and Switzerland participate in Ottawa Group. The United States and China are not participating. The GG Press obtained on the 23rd that the two governments of Japan and Thailand will conclude a memorandum of cooperation to promote urban development around Bang Su Station, which is under construction as a central station to replace Hua Lamphong Station in Bangkok, I found out in the draft. A memorandum of cooperation will be signed between Japan's Ministry of Land, Infrastructure, Transport and Tourism, and the Urban Renewal Organization, and Thailand's Ministry of Transport and Japanese National Railways. The draft stipulates that a common understanding has been reached to strengthen the mutual cooperation. The goal is to strengthen the mutual cooperation by exchanging knowledge and experience. In Tokyo stock market on the 24th, after the Golden Week holiday, buying became dominant following the rise in U.S. stocks the day before. The Nikkei stock average has risen by more than 600 yen compared to the previous weekend, hitting a new high this year during trading hours on the 17th. As of 9:30 a.m., it was 261.21 yen, higher at 26,148.58 yen. In the U.S. market the day before, the major stock indexes all rose due to the expectations for progress in development of the new coronavirus vaccine. In response to this, prices in a wide range of industries in Tokyo market have been rising since the morning. The depreciation of yen and the appreciation of the dollar also help export-related stocks. The amount of resources of Japanese flying squid inhabiting the Sea of Japan is decreasing sharply due to the rise in seawater temperature and illegal overfishing by China. It was about 540,000 tons in FY 2019, a decrease of about a quarter of the most recent fiscal year, 1997, about 2.01 million tons. The introduction of international resource management measure is required, but the hurdles for realization are high, including North Korea as a related country. The Fisheries Research and Education Agency, a national research and development corporation, recently announced the results of a resource evaluation that takes into account China's catch for the first time until now. The actual operation of China was unknown, but the catch in the Sea of Japan in FY 2007 was estimated to be 150,000 tons, based on the data described in the treatise. On the other hand, Japan's waste is less than 1/10, about 14,000 tons, the lowest in the last 30 years. The U.S. automobile giant General Motors announced on the 23rd that it would withdraw support from the administration in connection with a lawsuit in which the state of California sued the Trump administration over automobile emission regulations. The policy was changed based on the fact that former Vice President Joe Biden, who secured the election in presidential election, is aiming to tighten environmental regulations. Toyota Motor Corporation, which supports the current administration, is likely to be forced to follow suit. GM CEO Barra has sent a letter to environmental groups stating that he will immediately withdraw support for the federal government in the proceedings. According to U.S. media, he said he is calling on other companies to support the move. Barra said to address climate variability, the President-elect California and GM are in agreement with a bold electric vehicle introduction target. KIRIN Holdings Company Limited announced on the 24th that it is true that they are negotiating with various transfer candidates, and local dairy giant Mega Cheese is also a candidate regarding the sale of Australian beverage business. It has not been decided at this time, and in any facts that should be announced in the future arise, it will be disclosed promptly. The UN Human Rights Council's Working Group on Arbitrary Detention accuses former Nissan Motor chairman Carlos Ghosn of arresting and detaining him in Japan as a fundamentally unjustified. It turned out on the 23rd that the book was compiled. In response, Ghosn's attorney issued a statement on the same day, emphasizing that he welcomes the courageous decision. The written opinion is dated 20th and is not legally binding. The working group criticized Ghosn for arrest and detention as abusing procedures to keep Ghosn in custody. The right to a fair trial, such as free communication with lawyers, was hampered. The working group demanded compensation from the Japanese government for Ghosn as an appropriate remedy. They made it possible to conduct an independent investigation into arbitrary detention and called on the responsible person to take appropriate measures. Until the University of Tokyo and French National Center for Scientific Research team is 24 days, clarify the policy to develop if they were infected with the new coronavirus, a prototype of a paper sensor that can be easily inspected by yourself to prospect the March next year. We are aiming to realize a product that can determine the presence or absence of a virus simply by dropping saliva on a paper sensor and taking a picture with a smartphone. By using paper, it becomes cheaper and can be thrown away, said South Australia, an associate professor of Institute of Industrial Science, University of Tokyo. The French side will develop beads microparticles that glow when bound to the ribonucleic acid RNA of the new coronavirus. The surface of the beads is covered with DNA that binds only to viral RNA. If there is only one type, the possibility of false positives and false negatives increases. So devise beads with different combinations of RNA and DNA sequences and different ways of shining, and prepare several types. The Ministry of Justice released the 2020 White Paper on Crime on the 24th. The number of arrests for violations of the cannabis control law in 2019 increased by 21.5% from the previous year to 4,570, a new record high. It seems that young people tend to downplay at the adverse effects of drugs and emphasize the need for accurate information dissemination. Cannabis is considered to be one of the gateway drugs that can easily trigger the use of other drugs, such as stimulants. In special survey of the White Paper, 351 of the 699 men and women who had used stimulants had used cannabis. Mari Motohashi, 34, who contributed to winning the bronze medal as a captain of Loco Soler at the 2018 Pyeongchang Olympics curling girls, will face the official game for the first time in December. In June 2018, she announced the suspension of player activities, but she practiced with the aim of participating in the Japan Championship in February next year, and showed her enthusiasm, saying it is best to get good results and connect to curling fever. She gave birth to her second child in January this year. In June, she resumed training in earnest and skipped the role of command tower in the training team Loco Stella. I like curling, so I have more moments when I feel like I'm on the ice, she reaffirmed. An unscrupulous guru has set out for Europe, where the World Cup of Skiing will begin. Naoya Tabara of Gaias, Japan, a freestyle aerial boy, and Masako Ishida of JR Hokkaido, a Nordic distance girl. Both veterans who also serve as coaches will show their health in the pre-season of the 2022 Beijing Olympics. Tabara, who has experience as a former Japan National Rugby Union, is 40 years old on December 24th. After standing on the stage of the Pyeongchang Olympics in 2018, when he was 37 years old, he had no affiliation and was on the verge of retirement. But he said, "I am motivated by the companies that support me. It was a miscalculation that I couldn't do an overseas training camp in the summer due to the coronavirus. But I am enthusiastic that I will divide it in Beijing. I will do my best to that extent." And that's all for today. See you tomorrow for another news update.